Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be learning about inbuilt variables. So as we learned in the previous videos, we can create our own variables in P5 and store data in them. But here's the cool thing. P5 itself has some special variables that it makes available to us. And one example of this is the mouse x and mouse y variables. These variables store the real-time x and y values of the mouse and can be used by us. So let's try something simple to understand what they are. To do that, let's draw an ellipse in the center of the canvas. And we're going to make it of height and width 50 and 50. And let's just test if it's working. Perfect. Now, as we mentioned, mouse x contains the x value of the mouse position. So what that means is as I move my mouse here, the x value of the mouse goes from 0 to 400. And that's what mouse x will contain. Which means if we change the value of the x position of the ellipse to mouse x, the ellipse should follow us in the x-axis. And that's what's happening. So unfortunately it doesn't follow on the y-axis because the y value is still 200 and we haven't changed it. So let's change that to mouse y as well. And there we have it. We have a very simple animation of a ball following the mouse. Now what happens here if we move this background line from draw to setup? If you're following along the video, we request you to pause the video here. Think about what would happen and then resume. Okay, so let's move the background from draw to setup and see what happens. So as you can see, there's a trail of ellipses left behind. And we basically have a simple paint application now. So just like we mentioned in the last video, if you move the background into setup, it gets drawn only once. But the ellipses keep getting drawn again and again. And so in fact, if you make this smaller and maybe remove the stroke, you're almost halfway through creating a paint application. And you can write text and everything with it. But more on that in the next video. Let's see how we can use this mouse x and mouse y to create animation of sorts. Let's start with a simple rectangle to see how we can do that. So we're going to move the background back over here for that. So what we'll do is let's draw a rectangle at the top left corner at 0, 0 and give the width and the height as mouse x and mouse y. And here you go. You basically have this sort of animated rectangle now where the size of the rectangle varies based on your mouse position. Now let's take this one step further. Let's go back to the code that we wrote where we drew an emoji. Can we do something like making the emoji yawn when we move when we move the mouse, or maybe making its eyes open and close as we move the mouse? So let's try that out. So let's quickly go ahead and copy paste the emoji code over here. Okay, so we have the colored emoji over here. So let's use mouse x and mouse y so that there's some animation on this emoji when we move the mouse. For example, when we move the mouse left to right, can we make the face open and close like a yawn? So let's look at the math behind that. Currently the height of this circle, of the mouth that is 20. Now let's say when the mouse is all the way to the left over here, we want the height to be 0. And when we move all the way to the right, we want it to be 40. So we can do some complex maths to get this, or we can use mouse x. So let's just simply substitute mouse x to the height and see what happens. Okay, so the height is 0. But as we keep going right, it increases way too much. So what is happening now is when I move all the way to the right, the height of the mouth is basically 400. But we want it to be something small, like 40. So that's nothing but saying mouse x divided by 10. So let's try it now. So there, we have an actual yawning emoji. And what we can do is we can associate the mouse y value to the eyes so that the eyes open and close as they're yawning. So we can do the same thing for that over here. for the eyes, the height, instead of making it 20, we can make it mouse y divided by 20. Now these are just values we're trying out. It's code. You can freely play around with it. There's no need to be afraid of wondering what will happen. If there's something you want to experiment, just go ahead and experiment it. So if I move my mouse this way, the mouth is opening and closing. And if I move it up and down, the eyes are opening and closing. And if we move it diagonally, we can have both of them open and close at the same time. And we can even try out things like this. So there, we've animated our drawing. So try this out with the emojis and the drawings that you've made so far. With the values, see what happens, and definitely share your work with us. We're very excited to see what you make. Thank you.